Some secrets hide in shadows. Others stare back at you from the back of a milk carton. For Bonnie Loman, a childhood of constant moves and hushed conversations was all she knew until the day she glimpsed her own face on a missing child poster in a Colorado supermarket. In that heartbeat, her world split in two, the life she thought she had, and the truth that had been stolen from her. What follows is a twisting tale of love, lies, and the families we don't choose. A story where nothing is simple, not the parents who raised her, not the father who never stopped searching, and certainly not the girl caught between them. Because the past never stays buried. And some discoveries refuse to be ignored. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. We read every single comment and subscribe for more inspiring content. Bonnie Loman has always been aware that her life was not like everybody else's. Her birth year was 1975, and she spent her childhood under the watchful eye of her parents. She spent her childhood bouncing about between the sun-drenched beaches of Hawaii and the cobblestone alleys of Spain. The day she saw her own face looking back at her from the back of a milk carton was the first time she ever questioned why they never remained in one spot for a long period of time. She had been homeschooled and had also been secluded. Once and for all, Bonnie's parents made the move to Colorado in 1982 when she was 7 years old. She was granted permission to leave their closely regulated environment for the very first time, even if it was just for a short excursion to the grocery store in the supermarket. And thrilling experience was had by everybody, including the bright lights, the tall shelves, and the freedom to explore. Bonnie was grinning as she explored this weird new realm as she dashed through the aisles of the supermarket, while her father was there inspecting the vegetables. After then, she became aware of it. A milk container that was partially concealed by other items. Curiosity compelled her to draw it forward. And there, emblazoned in sharp black and white, was the visage of a kid or young child. It was her face, disappearing. This is Bonnie Loman. The last time anybody saw them was in San Francisco in 1979. Immediately notify the authorities if you find anything. She was unable to breathe. Those dates were completely illogical. It seemed as if she had never left her parents' side, didn't she? The carton was taken away from her by her father before she had a chance to absorb what had happened. His expression was pallid, and his grasp was firm. In an impassioned whisper, he pleaded with me. Don't tell anyone about this, ever. While she was too startled to respond, Bonnie nodded. Although she was unable to decipher the words, she was able to comprehend the terror that was in his voice. Afterward, there was a touch on her father's shoulder. There was a law enforcement officer standing behind them, and his eyes darted back and forth between Bonnie and the milk container that was still being held by her father. Sir, the officer replied and maintained his composure. We need to have a word. Following then, a flurry of events took place. The anxious gaze that her father cast toward the exits. Suddenly, her mother let out a gasp from the aisle next to her. The manner in which the officer's hand was hovering close to his radio. Bonnie was not yet able to comprehend the situation, but the pieces were beginning to fit together. The motion that is continual. How about homeschooling? When they heard the police sirens, her parents flinched in fear. It wasn't only that they were firm. They would not be seen. And she was the key to the game. In the end, it was discovered that Bonnie had been abducted, but not in the manner that anybody had anticipated. What she considered to be her parents were in fact her aunt and uncle, Bonnie's biological mother, who was also their sister, had passed away in a vehicle accident while she was still a little child. As they were overcome with sadness and thought that they could provide her with a better life. They abducted her and disappeared. The picture of the milk carton? It was the result of a frantic effort that had been started by her father, who was her biological father and had spent years looking for her sister. Bonnie was handed back to her biological father, a guy who had diligently searched for her throughout her whole life. A mixture of emotions, bewilderment, and the hard and arduous process of establishing trust were all there throughout the reunion, which was bittersweet. Where do her aunt and uncle stand? However, Bonnie's evidence, which said that they had loved her in their own perverted manner, reduced the severity of their punishment. They were charged with abduction for the crime. After some time had passed, Bonnie would eventually become an advocate for children who had gone missing and publish a book about her experience. Additionally, she would halt whenever she came across a milk container, recalling the day when a single glimpse had the power to completely transform her whole life. Because there are instances when the truth is lurking right in front of your eyes. When Bonnie finally got to see her biological father, David Lohman, it was nothing like she had thought it would be. As a result of years of searching, his face had become weathered, and he was a tall man with miserable eyes. He did not declare, "I am your father," as he knelt down in front of her with his hands shaking to the point of shaking. Rather than that, he said, "You look exactly right like her. It is she." Clara had been the name of Bonnie's mother, who was also his wife. The home that David owned was a temple to the family that Bonnie had never met. Albums of photographs that were full with birthdays that she could not recall. A little pair of pink shoes that had been kept in a glass cabinet. These shoes represent her first steps in a life that was snatched away from her. In addition, Clara left a solitary, eerie message for David a few hours before the accident, which read as follows: "David, pick up extra diapers on your way home, okay?" All throughout the day, Bonnie has been a spoiled brat. Bonnie remained silent as she listened to it. She then posed the question that had been raging inside her for quite some time. Why did they take me? An intricate response was provided by David. Her Aunt Maria had a history of harboring feelings of envy for Clara. Following the birth of Bonnie, Maria developed an unhealthy obsession with her daughter. She used to say, "You were the daughter she never had," David had stated. In the aftermath of the disaster, Maria and her husband, Carlos, decided to flee rather than agree to let David raise their own kid. David stated with a sour tone, "They believed they were working to save you due to the loss." For my part, the atmosphere in the courtroom was strained. With a stony expression on their faces, Maria and Carlos sat there while the prosecution depicted them as monsters. On the other hand, when Bonnie entered the stand, she did not say that they were kidnappers. What she referred to as Mom and Dad, "They loved me," she said behind her hand. They were wrong, but they loved me. Given the severity of the allegations, the court decided to grant them a sentence of 5 years in prison. Maria glanced around with tears flowing down her face as they were being brought away in handcuffs. "Bonnie, I am really sorry. We just didn't want to lose you either." Bonnie anticipated that adjusting to her real life would be easier than it really was. David made every effort, but they were unfamiliar with one another. They were unaware of her aversion to peas. Thunderstorms were something that she dreaded the most. In order for her to fall asleep, she required 3 tales before bedtime. During this time, Maria's letters from jail came on a weekly basis. Her handwriting was a looping pattern that filled the pages with recollections of her time spent at the beach in Hawaii and dancing flamenco in Spain. "You're always happy," she stated in her letter. "Does that count for nothing?" In response, Bonnie was at a loss for words. In the middle of the night, following a heated argument with David about not trying hard enough, Bonnie shut herself in her room and locked herself within. She took out an old showbox, which was the sole memento she had retained from Maria and Carlos. Polaroids of a little girl giggling in the surf, a birthday cake with an excessive number of candles, and a Christmas morning in Madrid were all included inside the photograph. Who took these memories, or who gave them to us? Then she discovered it at the very bottom of the pile. A clipping from the newspaper. Local couple killed in tragic accident. Infant daughter missing. A letter written by hand was placed below it. We couldn't allow you to be by yourself. Please pardon us. In subsequent years, Bonnie would be seen standing at two graves. Clara, the mother she had never known, was the owner of one of them. One of them was Maria's, who had passed away from untreated cancer while she was incarcerated. Both were adorned with flowers by Bonnie, for the reason why love is not easy. Occasionally, it is an embrace from the father who has never given up on his child. Occasionally, it is a falsehood spoken by those individuals who are unable to let go. And there are occasions when there is a face on a milk carton, and it is about to change everything. The home in Spain that Bonnie had spent the summers in as a kid, believing it was simply another stop in her parents' itinerant existence, was the one that she received when she was 23 years old with Maria's inheritance. There was no ambiguity in the will. Everything was left to Bonnie. David urged her to carry out the plan. Sell it, were his words. It is time to put an end to that chapter. But as soon as Bonnie entered the home that was bathed in sunlight, memories of the past began to resurface in hushed tones. Maria's reading to her was accompanied by the creaking of the porch swing. It was in this kitchen that Carlos instructed her on how to prepare paella. There was a trace of jasmine fragrance that was still clinging to your curtains. It was then that she discovered it as she was cleaning up Maria's bedroom. An unfastened floorboard. Located underneath was a lockbox that had corroded. A little tarnished object was used to secure the key to the bottom of Maria's jewelry case. It was taped there. Do you have the box? In a different name, a passport that has a photograph of Bonnie when she was a baby. A ticket for a one-way flight from San Francisco to Honolulu that has started to fade. A note that was addressed to Clara and written in Maria's handwriting was also included. The moment Bonnie opened it, her hands began to shake. To the lovely Clara, the fact that you are reading this indicates that I have let you down twice. Once by failing to save you, and again by failing to honor my promise. In the event that anything were to happen to you, I said that I would look out for Bonnie. However, you did not intend for this to happen, did you? Honestly, I was in a state of terror. Following the collision, when the medical professionals informed me that David was unable to provide care for her, I assumed. I was under the impression that I could provide her with the kind of life that you had envisioned for her. The absence of shadows, the presence of music, and pure love. However, I see you in her grin every single day, and I am aware that I have taken more than just a kid. Having stolen a heritage. This will be left for Bonnie to handle. As a result, she will eventually realize that her first word was not Mama. Star was the word. When she made that statement, you were pointing up to the heavens. I beg your pardon. Maria Bonnie was unable to move. Did David become unstable as a result of the accident? To her surprise, there was a knock at the door. Luz, an older neighbor, was standing there with a tray of mantecados in his hand. As she spoke, she continued, I knew you'd come back. Maria had always predicted that you would. As Luz sipped his harsh coffee, he divulged information that the letter did not. David had been taken to the hospital after the collision. The term grief madness was used by Luz. While he was screaming that Clara wasn't dead, he attempted to take Bonnie away from the morgue. There was a temporary custody order issued for Maria and Carlos. Prior to the intervention of David's sister, she informed the judges that David would be responsible for Bonnie's death. So that's when they took off. There was a chill in Bonnie's coffee. Could her aunt have rescued her, or the theft of her? During that evening, she made a phone call to David, the letter serving as a live wire between them. It was her question. Is it true? When it comes to the hospital, there was a prolonged pause. Then, my heart was shattered, Bonnie. However, it is not hazardous. In front of the court, Maria lied. His voice was trembling. She was aware that I would recover. The thing is, she just did not want to hand you back. The next morning, Bonnie made her way up the hill that was located behind the villa, which was the spot where Maria would go to view the sunset. She was carrying the letter, the ticket, and the passport in her pocket. A gust of wind came dangerously close to ripping the pages out of her hands, and for a brief minute, Bonnie entertained the idea of escaping with them. I was seeing the truth disperse into the Mediterranean Sea like ashes. However, there are certain secrets that should not be kept hidden. She reached for her phone and phoned the number that she had disregarded for a number of years. On the second ring, Carlos responded to the call. "Bonnie?" she asked. His tone was more shabby and older. What she said was, I have questions. This was the first time that she met each and every one of them.